Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in reply to Her Excellency's speech in opening this session of the 55th Parliament of South Australia, and I wish to place on record my thanks to Her Excellency the Honourable Frances Adamson, AC Governor of South Australia, and congratulate her on her position and thank her for opening this historic session of the Parliament in Ghanaland. Mr. President, I feel very privileged to be elected to the Legislative Council in the South Australian Parliament. It's not a position that I hold lightly, and I feel a huge responsibility to those who elected me and also to the wider South Australian community whom I wish to make a difference. I want to thank all the volunteers, and I want to thank Senator Pauline Hanson and the One Nation National Executive Council for endorsing me to this position. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share now some of my background and outline some of the life experiences which have shaped the person that I am. And I'm grateful to be given this time to share how this history influences my values and primary goals in the Parliament. Mr. President, my father is of Lithuanian and German heritage, born shortly after his parents immigrated to Australia. He is the eldest of 8 children, growing up in a 3-bed housing trust home in Adelaide. Life was difficult. His father was a gambler and a violent man. There was never enough money. As a child, my father put cardboard inside his worn-out shoes to protect his feet on the long walk to school. My dad always wanted me to appreciate everything that I had. For this reason, as a child, he shared stories with me of his own upbringing. Many stories stayed with me, including the time my father received a bicycle for his birthday, sold the next day for his father's gambling money. My father tells me he and his siblings were always playing on the streets. There was just no room in the house to do any homework. And although my dad left school without finishing, he returned later in life and he went on to study dentistry, supporting himself by working full-time as a hotel night porter. My father believed in individual responsibility. He believed that the individual had the capacity to change their circumstances. He told me to work hard for everything that I wanted and that nobody should expect anything is given to them. He also engendered in me a belief that I could achieve anything with this attitude. As a child, I accepted his view of the world, although, like many young people, I had waxing and waning self-belief as I grew up. I respect my father for his achievements and his support for my education, and his views have shaped my own, although my views have further developed with my own life experience, and unfortunately, I do not share my father's views that anything can be achieved with good work ethic and the right attitude. These attributes are part of the solution, but they are not the complete solution, and I hold the belief that there are obstacles that the government needs to remove to allow people an equitable opportunity in life, and I'm passionate about removing obstacles that prevent those who are desiring and those who are willing to achieve their full potential. Mr. President, my paternal grandparents were immigrants. They came to Australia after the Second World War because their countries of birth had had their democracies destroyed. And I want to make clear that I support genuine refugee intake and Australia's responsibility to help communities overseas in need. I support and acknowledge the benefit of sustainable, cohesive immigration to Australia. Immigration has enriched our culture and skill base. Despite immigrating here at 18, my Oma retained her thick Bavarian accent her whole life. She brought with her wonderful culinary skills, and she maintained German traditions that enriched my childhood, particularly at Easter and Christmas. In terms of what I hope to achieve, I want to make clear that I make no distinction between Australians born overseas and Australians born here. I want to advocate for all South Australians. I'm passionate about equalising opportunity for everyone. Mr. President, my mother went to university and she obtained a science degree when it was a path largely followed by men. She found on her first employment that there was not equal pay for equal work between men and women. She comes from a line of women who believe in the importance of education and the right for women to be independent financially. I grew up the only child of a single working mother. My mother always worked full-time and she felt the full weight of financial responsibility to support our household. Her work responsibilities and hours spent commuting greatly limited our time together growing up. I'm very grateful to be a mother now myself to 3 beautiful children, and I'm passionate about my time with them and the right for others to have stability and security in which to raise their children and spend essential time together. Mr. President, my maternal grandparents imparted to me a Jewish heritage, and I'm proud of this heritage. My grandparents valued education. My grandmother was a physiotherapist, and while my grandfather never had the opportunity to finish school, he was a very intelligent man. My grandfather was forced to leave the education system at the age of 12 to help support his mother. His sister and brothers were already part of the war in the Pacific, and my grandfather started his own business and remained self-employed his whole life. Mr. President, I believe in people's right to maintain their culture and belief practices in Australia in a way that fosters a unified Australia, good relationships and respect between everybody. I'm grateful to have been born in Australia, a democratic country of great beauty, and in my life I've had the opportunity to obtain an education, a privilege that is not afforded to many around the world. I've always had a roof over my head, and I've never had to experience poverty. However, like most people, life has thrown me challenges which have shaped the person that I am, and I count these challenges as very good preparation for my current role in Parliament. Mr. President, like many young people, at times I found life difficult, and by Year 10 I was struggling and almost bottom in nearly every subject. I was dealing with the consequences of my parents' separation and numerous school moves, and like many young people, at times my mental health suffered. My mother worried I would leave school early and without any plan or direction. Encouragement from my Year 10 mathematics teacher kept me from dropping out of the education system, and I would like to thank my mathematics teacher, Mr. Wethered, for his interest in my future and the numerous times he assisted me on a daily basis as I visited the staff room at recess and lunch with mathematics problems for years. By Year 12, I was inducted to the school. I developed a love of advanced mathematics and earned a university entrance score of 99.7. I gained entry to veterinary science at the University of Sydney, and I graduated with a first-class honours degree. The result of my educational achievement was the realisation that if I had the ability to turn life around, there were many other underachievers who had that ability too, with the right encouragement, resources and self-belief. This planted a seed for my later passion and involvement with education. Mr. President, I want to talk briefly about why I chose to study veterinary medicine, because in the end I had the choice to undertake any university course I wanted. As an only child, I did supplement my need for siblings with a variety of pets, and I've always had a deep love and affection for animals, owning everything from fish, mice, guinea pigs, dogs, cats, horses later in life. Many of the pets came from rescue centres, and all were treated as a member of the family. I always held a desire to live a meaningful life and make a contribution, and this, with my childhood experience for animals, influenced my decision to undertake veterinary medicine. I undertook an additional year of research on the black rhinoceros at Dubbo Zoo. Such was my passion for saving endangered animals. Mr. President, I turned my life around at the 11th hour, but I do not believe the same opportunity is afforded to everyone. I do not hold the belief that young people affected by these external factors with the right attitude and work ethic alone obtain a fair chance to reach their potential. In South Australia, there are 132,000 people living in poverty, including 22,000 children. It's unacceptable, and it needs to be a priority for the government. These children often do not have the bare resources to engage adequately with school. Many children live in unstable or unsafe environments in which they cannot study or receive assistance with any home learning. Their parents are subjected to stresses of unaffordable housing and insecure employment, and these stresses funnel down to children. Disadvantage is embedded early in this state, with many children starting school age 5 already behind their peers and too often with undiagnosed disabilities. And while I acknowledge there are examples of achievement by individuals against great odds, this in no way excuses or provides justification for an apathetic attitude about changing the inequality of opportunity given to many aspiring families in our state. It's in the interest of society to remove barriers and to allow everybody to be on a level playing field. This is essential for our social cohesion, innovation and creativity. It's important for supporting family values and mental health and well-being of our citizens. In order to make these changes, South Australia needs to be an attractive place for investment. Mr. President, a sense of adventure and a desire to travel has existed in my family for a long time. As a child, our house was full of books, including many travel guides that I enjoyed reading. My father had spent many years as a dentist in the Navy, and my mother had travelled extensively. Before I was born, my mother had enjoyed flying light aircraft. I always held a desire to travel and experience different cultures, and as soon as I could after university, I wanted to see the world. At the age of 24, I left Australia wanting an adventure. I've since been to Asia, the United States, Eastern and Western Europe and the Middle East. I have made friends in different countries and cultures to my own. I became, as an adult, fluent in a second language. I settled in England for a decade, enjoying trips to surrounding countries. Mr. President, although I have enjoyed many aspects of veterinary practice, it is not a profession without its difficulties. Veterinarians have 4 times the suicide rate of the Australian population. Vets are leaving the profession in droves, despite being passionate and committed people. They are resilient professionals working under great stress for little pay. They work long hours and sacrifice time with their families. Despite the stresses I found while working as a vet, it a great privilege to care for animals, and I enjoyed building client relationships. However, while in England, my passion for young people and education was growing, and I applied to do a postgraduate certificate of education at King's College London. My cohort comprised of people with established careers in a science-based field. On completing the qualification, I received the Blackwell Prize, which was awarded to the student who'd shown the most promise in teaching. My first education posting was to a school marked for closure. These children lived in poverty, in dysfunctional or unsafe homes, and these situations deeply affected their ability to learn. Years of government intervention had failed to stem the decline in teacher morale and student outcomes. And although it was my desire to work in this kind of environment, it was still distressing. I want to state that my experience with the children and the relationship I built with them at this school are a life highlight for me. I thoroughly enjoyed their interaction and company, although it hurts me to know that they never received a fair chance to fulfil their potential. Despite my hopes, intentions and best efforts to make a lasting difference with these young people, I failed. There were too many external factors for the students to overcome. After the school closed, I subsequently taught at a large beacon college in the south of England with a couple of thousand students. It was called a beacon college because it was considered at the time to be an exemplar of education. This college enrolled students in their last 2 years of high school and was successfully providing an excellent and free education to young people with a wide variety of economic and social circumstances. I taught students living in share accommodation because, for various reasons, they were unable to live at home. The achievement of my students was recognised by the principal when he wrote to me thanking me for my hard work. In the letter, the principal acknowledged that these results were unlikely to have been achieved if they'd been taught by anybody else. And over the years, in each of my classes, the unusually high results were obtained and noticed, and I was asked as a new teacher to reflect and share on the reason behind this achievement. Mr. President, I set high expectations for my students, which translated into high personal student goals, and this fueled their own hard work. I made myself, as my mathematics teacher had done for me, available to scaffold them at every opportunity. And it was here that we had the winning factors of a properly resourced college, a passionate qualified teacher and student motivation. Mr. President, as previously mentioned, I am now the mother of 3 beautiful, healthy children. However, when my second child was born blind, I was traumatised. And my mental health suffered. Although I was lucky that she recovered, due to the blindness resulting from the visual cortex, which ultimately repaired herself, I lived initially with great uncertainty about her future. Shortly after the birth of my 3rd child, I found myself a single parent, and life had taken an unexpected turn. Unfortunately, the experience of trauma is widespread and too many people struggle without appropriate mental health support, particularly in our rural communities, and we need to rethink about how mental health services are delivered in this state. Mr President, I have many goals and ambitions for my 8-year term. However, given my speech, it will come as no surprise that as a top priority, I want to know that no matter which government school a child attends, they receive the same educational opportunities and subsequently the same employment opportunities as if they went to school anywhere else in the state. There are many factors involved here, including a cohesive society, thriving economic environment, right to safety and protection, well-resourced schools and good quality teachers. I'm passionate about mental health and increasing the accessibility of face-to-face mental health services in particular. Mr President, ironically, although I never aspired to be a politician, everything I have done in my life and everything that has happened to me in my life has prepared me for the task ahead. I don't do trivial and I say what I mean. I'm accountable to the South Australian people and I am determined to be an effective voice for them. Thank you. My snotty hand.